Hi, everyone. I just wanted to give a quick tutorial on how to create your Lewis structures within the Chem 101 platform. And so when you have any problem that is asking you to do a Lewis structure, you're going to initially see a screen that looks pretty much like this, with just a couple of blank elements, and you'll have probably your target molecule up here. This particular question is calling for NH3. I'm not going to do NH3 because that's actually one of your homework problems. And so let's just look at a couple others. Let's say, for instance, that we want to do the structure for CH4. So like in a lot of other, or like in most other Chem 101 problems, I do always recommend, and I'm just pulling up my whiteboard here, I always recommend that you do the problem out on paper first, and then actually complete it within Chem 101. And so let's say, for example, that we want to do the structure or the Lewis diagram for CH4. And so we come up with this for our Lewis structure. And trust me that is it. I would encourage you to do this on your own to be sure that you get it. But the way that we actually then transform this into this is, keep in mind that anytime any atom that's highlighted red is the one that you're sort of working with at that moment. You have a couple options, a couple different ways to change the element or to make the atom into a different element. You can either hit the change element down here. We're going to go ahead and make this one carbon. Or you can simply double click it. Double click, and that also brings up the periodic table, and we're going to select hydrogen. Now we start out only with a 2-atom molecule. We obviously want carbon as a central atom with 4 bonds coming off it for this structure. And so we're again going to click onto carbon. Then we're just going to use this slider here to change the number of bonds that are going to carbon. We want 4. And so there's our 4 bonds going to carbon. And now we would just have to change all of the other elements to be hydrogen. And there we go. And so then we would have our Lewis structure for CH4. Let's look at just a couple other examples as we're playing with this here. Let's say we are doing the Lewis structure for HCN. So remember, this is our Lewis structure for hydrocyanic acid. And so we can go through the same sort of steps. If we want, we can just go directly left to right. Here's our this would be our hydrogen here. So we're just going to double click, turn that into hydrogen. Here's our carbon. Now we want 4 bonds. Let me, there's a better way to do this. You don't want to go with 4 bonds right away if you're working with multiple bonds. That brings up this sort of situation, which is the only thing that you can then work with. Instead, go to 2 bonds, go ahead and change this one to our nitrogen. And then to change to have multiple bonds, you need to click on the bond itself. So now you click on the bond, and we can see that our slider here is changing. Our slider's changed. We have electrons and bonds, but if we click on the bond, then we have bond type. And we need a triple bond, so we just slide it up to a triple bond. And then we can click back on the nitrogen in order to get our lone pair on there. So now that we're clicked on to the nitrogen, we want to change our number of electrons. We can see that in our Lewis structure, we have 1 lone pair on nitrogen. So we're going to move our slider up to 1 lone pair. Let's look at one last example. Let's do 2 more. Let's also do carbon dioxide. So this is our Lewis structure for carbon dioxide. Again, I encourage you to do these for some more practice, so you're able to actually know how to do them. And again, let's just sort of go right straight from left to right. Our first atom on the left is an oxygen, so we'll change that to oxygen. Then carbon, and then we're going to change our number of bonds on carbon to 2, so we can put our other oxygen in here. There's our other oxygen. Then let's go ahead and change both of our bonds. We're going to change this to a double bond. We'll change this one to a double bond. And then we need to change our number of electrons. Each of these oxygen have four lone pairs, or sorry, 2 lone pairs, 4 electrons. So we slide that up to 4 electrons. And there's CO2. One last one. Let's go ahead and do an expanded octet. Let's do xenon hexafluoride. Actually, we'll do xenon tetrafluoride. If you haven't reviewed expanded octets yet, I would do that. That's in one of the supplemental videos, expanded octets and resonance structures. But here is our Lewis structure for xenon tetrafluoride, and we have 2 lone pairs there on our xenon as well. So let's add that in. So we'll reset here. Let's go ahead and actually we'll change, doesn't matter which one we change, let's go ahead and change this one here to our xenon. And then off xenon, we want 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds. So we hit our slider up to 4 bonds on xenon. And we can change all of our actual atoms here to fluorine. Now we're going to add in lone pairs. Each fluorine has 6 electrons total as lone pairs, so we add those in. Our xenon, however, also has 2 lone pairs. So we're going to add those in. And we can see that it gets a little messy just because of the way that Chem 101 depicts it. Doesn't really change if we blow that up. But there are still the various lone pairs in here. One of the things that I like about this platform too is you can see that as we change our number of lone pairs, it reconfigures things for us a little bit. We're not at a point quite yet in the course, depending on when you're watching this video, where we have talked about the molecular geometry and the shapes of molecules. But this app actually takes that into account. And so we would have what we call this classic seesaw shape with this many lone pairs on xenon versus a square planar shape with this many. If we had no lone pairs on xenon, we have our tetrahedral shape. And again, we're going to be studying those depending on when you're watching this video. But that's just something to keep in mind, is that Chem 101 will adapt the shape of this a little bit as you're doing your Lewis structures to give you an idea for what the actual 3-dimensional structure will be like. And so that's just a quick little tutorial on how to use Chem 101 in order to input your Lewis structures. And so good luck with your assignments. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Thanks for watching.